Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Digital Innovators Circle podcast. And today I have a special pleasure of having Brianna Schaefer as a guest from the NASS or the North America Spine Society. She is Director of Online Education and Accreditation. So welcome, Brianna. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about our experience. Yeah, so like you said, my name is Brianna Schaefer. I'm Director of Online Education and Accreditation at NASS. We are a global professional society for spine care. We're multidisciplinary with surgeons, physical therapists, researchers, chiropractors, and so on. And basically anyone that has a strong interest in spine care are members. We have about 8,000 members worldwide. My main focus is digital education and accreditation. So I work in that aspect of the education ecosystem, overseeing podcasts, YouTube, and just our general digital library engagement and curriculum.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. And what's interesting also about the NASS, as you alluded to it, is it's multidisciplinary association. So different specialties that are all focused on spine health. And so we started to work together last year around June, and then we launched your new library from October. And today we will be sharing a little bit of that experience of driving digital innovation at the NASS and being a digital champion of it. And I always love to start with the context. So before we ever met, where were you in terms of organizationally as a context, and more specifically when it comes to online content, conference recordings, webinars, and everything else before we met?
So I think a lot of traditional nonprofit societies, we were using a platform that was more of a video repository. It wasn't a engagement platform, and it wasn't necessarily a learning experience. And we also were leaning into our website for searchability. But honestly, at the end of the day, it was hard to discover the content. There really wasn't a lot of engagement data. And we really needed to move into a more modern, intuitive Netflix area, but we were limited in being able to do that. So, the content wasn't the problem, but accessing it and discovering it were.
All right. And then did you have a lot of content? So was it 50 hours plus, or was it hundreds of hours? And what kind of content did you have that belongs to, let's say, on-demand video, audio content mostly?
Yeah. So, a lot of our content are conference recordings. So every annual meeting, we had anywhere from, it was 3.5 days worth of content. So you're looking at anywhere from 60 to 90 hours of education available to our members, plus webinars and one-off online education, developed courses. So there was a lot of content available, but it was very, I would say, localized or specific to the specific event. So if somebody was a member or attended the event, then they would receive the recordings, but they wouldn't necessarily receive recordings from anything else. So it was very segmented, and they weren't necessarily realizing that there was additional content they could be accessing elsewhere because one video didn't necessarily lead to another.
I hear you, yeah. And then what were the systems that you were using to deliver that content? Because you mentioned that it was hard to search, hard to find, fragmented, which is something we hear very often when we meet medical associations. Like, we would love this to be a more seamless experience, but right now it's like that. Was that a mix of LMS, website, different systems, or how was it delivered?
Yeah, so we used, I don't know if I can, we use MediaSite. So it's more of a video repository. You're able to post the videos, and if someone had purchased them, they can watch them, but it's not necessarily a engagement platform. We also have, for more of our archival content, built within our LMS, and people can go onto our website and search for it. But the search generally came up with inconsistent results that were not predictable to a point where our members weren't really using it as intended, because we just weren't able to keep up with it with the amount of content available and even apply certain tags to make it searchable. So we just didn't have the bandwidth to keep up with newer content and as well as archival content.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And it's you touched on multiple things there. So first, as you mentioned, that repository. Interesting when I hear the words like archive or repository. Oftentimes, webinars are mentioned. Hey, we have a webinar archive, or we have a repository. It means that the content is accessible, right? But it doesn't mean that it would get watched or even monetized. And it always reminds me of that Kevin Costner movie. If you build it, they would come. Like Fields of Gold, I think. Because if you build it, they will come. Here, well, if you make it accessible, it doesn't mean that anyone will come, especially when there is no engagement layer to do it. So I think that that's the challenge with archives and repositories, like that fresh content kind of dies off, and it's very hard. And then search, especially everyone expects Google level search on anything, and it's and then especially as you mentioned, like tagging, right? And there has been technologies for many years that required associations to tag content manually, right? Like apart from name of the lecture and the interest or track, that you need to tag of a specific talk, and it's just not sustainable. And I think a lot of associations have been, and teams, learning and education teams have been burned by that, because it's just the insane number of hours that go into that. But now we have a technology that can do a lot of tagging and be able to just, there's no need for that, except to the high level classification. Can you comment a little bit on that, and what was your experience with that?
Yeah, so I mean, we've tried to tackle tagging in, I would say, 5 or 6 ways over the last decade. The thing is there's so many different ways to approach it, and you can get as detailed as you want, but if you're not consistent, it's worthless. And you know, I've worked with task forces over the years. We've worked internally, but it's been really difficult to land on a taxonomy that was broad enough to bring consistent results, but also narrow enough that if somebody's looking for a specific area in spine care, they're given the results. And then, like I said before, also just staying consistent with applying those tags NASS wide. So this is moving in this direction with Evermed and getting this platform where that feature is essentially embedded, and we were given best practice guidelines on how to apply them was huge for us.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that, because I try, and I keep saying this to my team, like, let's try to make it as easy as possible. We can't do everything, but if we can save time for the staff, especially for like tedious work, like it's you know, tagging and this repetitive and massive work, like let's do that. And then when it comes to the how conference recordings and other on-demand content, how is that offered from your side? What was the monetization path, and how well was it working? Was it a single year access? Was you already made the decision to consolidate before we met? What was the state with that?
So we have one annual meeting a year. So historically, the on-demand education component was included with in-person registration, but that's not to say that necessarily meant that they engaged with it. It was automatically applied to their profiles. And after doing some auditing of actual usage, I would say maybe a fifth of our annual meeting attendees actually watched the online recordings. We also allowed people that weren't able to attend to purchase that on-demand package as a separate offering. And then once they purchase it, once they have access, it's in their video library within their NASS profile indefinitely. So they can go back, they could go back and watch it anytime that they're interested in. But honestly, again, it's kind of a one and done situation. They watch it that year, they claim the CME, and then they forget about it and move on. So it becomes kind of a static document library that doesn't get utilized.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said it sounds like 80% of that content was not watched at all, right, after the content. So all these, you know, hundreds of hours of or tens of hours of content, you said 50 to 70, I think, and then all these, you know, 20 to 40 hours for a speaker to prepare, to do the slides, to rehearse, to all that. A year of preparing the scientific program. And then after it's done, even though it has value, and oftentimes it has CME credits as well, 80% does never get watched. And that is we hear that, and 80% it's just that's one of the reasons why we exist, to make sure that content continues to create value because it is valuable with or without CME credits, but continues to bring value and allows doctors to consume it in a way that is piecemeal, that fits into their busy life rather than, hey, here is everything, just try to go figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to put it, because I would say the value with the old model drops significantly after maybe 3 months. And our meeting is, it's usually in the fall of every year. So anywhere September, October, November. And I would say in general, by the end of the year, that product no longer had a lot of value. We would, some registrations would trickle in the new year, but it's generally forgotten about definitely after 6 months, with a huge drop after 3 months. So it just, all that time and effort putting into building all of those educational sessions is basically forgotten after a very short period of time.
Yeah. And this is one of the probably the most common beliefs that we have to address and kind of break that belief in the market when we talk, which is that conference content gets old. We hear after 30 days even. And then we say, well, our data doesn't show that. It shows that for 12 months, it continues to be watched because simply doctors need time to process new data, and they will not watch all of it. They will watch a certain number of hours throughout the year, every month. It will go from 10, 20 minutes to sometimes 2 hours. And then do it like that. So even the content that was 6 months old and 8 months old, it may not be old because they haven't really processed the new information that came from the conference. All right. So the problem, it sounds like, was clear. And I was wondering, was that problem recognized widely at the organization, or was it more an education level? And if it was, how did you try to tackle it, or what have you done to try to solve it?
This is definitely a problem that we've been trying to tackle between myself and our ID department for many, many years. I mentioned the search earlier, and that was a huge effort on their part to try to categorize, and organize our archives. But like I said, I think at the end of the day, despite all of that work and best efforts, it just was delivering inconsistent results. But the intent was there, and the understanding that our content has use beyond, like we were saying, 3 months, 6 months, a year. And then when I came into the education department and was overseeing podcasts and a couple of small projects, I saw the opportunity as well to consolidate and find a way to create a comprehensive platform that drove engagement versus these static experience, limited personalization, and limited analytics pathways, or where they're currently, where everything was kind of stored. I did speak internally and put together a whole slide deck on some ideas that I had on how we could do this, and kind of suggesting that we move away from our traditional video hosting platform, MediaSite, and either build in-house, which NASS tends to lean to try to do initially, or try to find a vendor that could help facilitate some of these ideas that I had, because I really saw as well the necessity to find a way to bring in some continuous, predictable, non-dues revenue at a time when engagement and new opportunities, I think, had already been explored. So it was a brand new concept, and I think everybody appreciated it in theory, but the execution was really hard to visualize.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I definitely want to mention, because when we met and we had the first conversation and we used the term Netflix, like all-in-one, consolidated, modern, beautiful, easy to search and find with curation, when we use that term, it's very rare that the reaction that you had, which is, well, you know what? I actually had a vision for this for about 3 years and had slides. Let me show you about this. And I used the term Netflix, and this vision was there. So it made a conversation, and we were kind of, I felt, on the same page. So that was very interesting. And the other thing that you mentioned was revenue. So how important was that idea? A lot of organizations, especially this year, especially there were some funding cuts, things happening, right? And are talking about non-dues revenue. So, and you also use the term predictable, which to me, I always, when I think predictable revenue in terms of online, I always think first of subscription model, which most associations don't have with their digital content. So when was it, just curious, when was that idea about the predictable non-dues revenue, potentially a subscription, a discussion point internally?
So I think it was all tied into the slide deck that I originally put together. That concept was brought to mind because, like I mentioned, the annual meeting recordings prior were included with registration. And there was also a lot of opportunity for us to consolidate content that was either free or archived or just one-off offerings in a way that would be appealing to our members so that they can continue to engage and choose to engage with it versus just being given it on the back end. And I think we really were in a position to consider that because, like you said, we're looking as an association for predictable non-dues revenue. And right now, a lot of the online education, in some ways, it's very much in flux because it really depends on what's being developed and how much is being developed year to year. So it's not predictable. But having a subscription where maybe there's slight variations in how much is added every year, it is a small caveat to that. But at the end of the day, if somebody finds content useful and the platform useful and beneficial to their growth, it doesn't matter that we could add 60 videos one year and 400 the next because of different projects, and it's still going to have a lot of value because it's a continued engagement platform and area for members to go to have personalized recommendations.
Yeah, and it's interesting when I talk about the subscription model to associations, there is an interest and a number of our clients have it right now. And then I always say, well, associations are actually very good at this model because membership is a subscription and it has renewal campaigns and it has a recurring value. So then when I say this, like, oh, actually, so we can do it. And there's this feeling of what is possible. We're already doing it and we already set up to do it through our systems and email campaigns and everything else. And just thinking about it, because subscription is less a transaction, which is here is something in a catalog, you buy it. It's more of a relationship. Like we have a relationship with Netflix because we use it monthly and we pay for it monthly, and Spotify and all that. So I think that's important distinction there also from transaction to relationship, which is quite different.
Yeah, and you can kind of look at it too as it's another way to build trust with your audience on how you're delivering it and what's going to be delivered and the quality of the delivery, especially like our members, again, are looking for easy access, for on-demand, for streaming, for modern platforms. And, like they're used to with more, with entertainment systems like Netflix and HBO. And this gave NASS and other associations the opportunity to build trust in that ecosystem as well.
All right. So at this point, the problem was recognized. There was a vision. What have you tried to do in order to address it, from search for technologies to alignment internally before we met?
Yeah. So like I said, IT looked into they built that search functionality, but then I also took it a step further and did a very comprehensive search for a learning management system. This was before I was aware of Evermed as an option. And, it was a great exercise for me, really understanding what was out there and what the possibilities were. But because NASS tends to build a lot of our online tools in-house, it would have been a really large lift to shift into a full-blown new learning management system. And like I said, and we also briefly considered finding ways to work with MediaSite to make it a little bit more dynamic. But neither of them they weren't going to be something that we would be able to turn around in a shorter amount of time. And I really had a sense of urgency that we were going to miss the boat if we didn't get on it sooner rather than later with finding a way to bring this forward. And then that's when I learned about Evermed. So, that, and like you mentioned, when we finally spoke, it was like two people at the opposite end of the world having the same idea. You didn't have to sell me on anything because I understood exactly what you were doing and why you were doing it. And you really understood the organization's needs and how to deliver them in a way that was quick and identified what we were looking for, and also just helping us establish best practices that I think we'd been struggling to find for a lot of years.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And it's interesting when thinking how to solve the problems. I also talk to associations who run a big LMS RFP, and when they were not aware of our solution, and it's one of the ways. The problem again with the LMS is they're not, their system is not designed for engagement. They're designed for compliance and structured learning and long form courses. And all of our clients have an LMS, and they continue to have an LMS, and they use it for structured learning. They use us as an engagement and monetization layer,
Yeah.
and they sit separately, and they launch like a library, usually consolidated subscription library. But I've seen that kind of an effort to do that. And then the other one that you mentioned, which is building it, right, is probably the hardest one for associations because it's not their core capability to build technology. There may
Correct.
be one or two associations, very large ones, that have tried that, and usually even if you launch it and you do it, and it's a lot of effort, a lot of money, time, energy, effort, alignment, and once you do it, the cost starts to go up, and the maintenance and the new features are slow, and the security and a lot of things start to, because it's a core capability. And then so the kind of building, I always say, like, please don't build it. It's just, you're going to spend a lot of time and energy and effort, and the life will pass. It's a lot of years. And then LMS, unfortunately, it doesn't solve the problem of engagement, and that's one of the reasons why we started Evermed, to be building, purpose-built for medical associations, understanding the exact workflows that they have, challenges they have, from how to manage content, from tagging to how to drive personalization, how to fit it in their email system and everything that they do without taking any revenue from any other areas. But yeah, I've seen the those kind of efforts. So we met then, and so what stood out for you, and okay, after the meeting, like, how would you go about, now I need to make an internal case about this?
How did I go about making it? So I did have one positive was that, you and I think had connected maybe a year prior before we spoke. And I had seen the potential right away, but there was, definitely some internal walls that prevented me from being able to move forward in other projects. So then our CEO, I believe, saw you at the CMSS meeting. And because I had already spoken with him about what I wanted to do moving forward with a lot of our content, as soon as he saw your platform, he also saw and recognized the potential of partnering with you to make that a reality. So he sent me an email when he returned back from that meeting, and I was like, well, this is great because I've been wanting to reach out to him. So that's to me, that's the green flag. Go right ahead. And we did, and we connected, and it's been a great experience in the almost 9 months since we signed the contract.
Yeah, and it's great because innovation is hard. I often say, when someone is a digital innovator like yourself, you're in an organization that is established, that has sometimes often traditional norms about how education is delivered, and you're faced with frustrating efforts to drive digital innovation. So it's very helpful when there is an executive sponsor like a CEO who would recognize the value, hear from other associations, because then your work becomes a little bit easier in the sense of aligning the entire organization, because it's a big decision to make. I'm not saying it becomes easy, it just becomes a little bit easier. You still had some other stakeholders, I assume, to align.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, once, at least internally, we aligned pretty quickly. And then it took, I would say I was pleasantly surprised in the long run how quickly we were able to move forward. Now that I look back on the whole timeline, the NASS board of directors, once they, really saw the platform, and we had additional external alignment from some of our key opinion leaders, I think as the NASS board is looking to, again, find new ways to bring in non-dues revenue and try to think a bit differently and modernize, they really saw the opportunity and gave the green light to go right ahead and move forward. And so, 5 months in, we're learning as we go, and we're pivoting where we need, and we're all very optimistic about where this is going to take us over the next couple of years.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that from that moment, as you said, there was a year since, like, for our meeting to happen. And then after that happened, it happened relatively quickly in terms of, I'm sure, a lot of internal meetings, but I think it was around May or June. And then we took about 3 months to launch. Like we commit contractually to 90 days. If we receive something a little bit later, sometimes it's 100 days, but it's around that period that we optimize for launch. So if you remember right now, it's been 5-6 months ago, but was there anything that stood out from that process of, about 3 months of launching that surprised you, something that you still remember, a moment that you thought this will work, this will not work, this will be hard, this will be easy? You start to see the glimpse of the vision. So anything you can share would be great to know.
Well, I remember when you told us the 90 days, we told you right up front that if it were to come beyond that, it would be on our side. And then we stayed true to our word. But, that said, so I think, one of the hurdles that I was most concerned about was the integration portion of it, because we do have a very complex customized system. But your team from the get-go was incredibly flexible, responsive, and just willing to work with us to make sure that it was integrated in a way that was timely and actually, worked well for us on our end as well as your own. So I think once we had crossed that finish line, and that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is going to happen. There isn't going to be something that is going to break that's going to stop us from needing to throw the whole thing in the trash. So yeah, the integration was huge for me. And of course, since I'm not a tech person, I kind of had to wait on the sidelines and cross my fingers as most as I can. And I remember your team especially built some custom code to ensure that the SSO was working properly. And that alone was such a promising sign for what's to come.
Yeah, that's good to know. I do remember when you said I'm not technical, but I know that we had some challenges in the past because we do have a specific way how our content storage area or content system is built, so that in order to speak to other systems, there will be some challenges. And you said it clearly upfront. It's like, I'm not sure what exactly the challenges are, but you will face some challenges when we start to work together. And we're like, okay, we're not scared. Let's figure it out. I know we had several meetings, and it turned out we were able to find the solution. And I totally understand, especially if you're non-technical, you have this kind of sigh, like a moment of relief. I'm like, oh, we can cross that river. And now we can actually focus on the content and engagement and revenue and many other things. Was there anything in terms of the content you used, or anything in terms of organizing that content that stood out in that process, something you remember that's worth sharing?
So like you said, I think it was hard for me to focus on the content until I knew it was actually going to work. And so moving into the content aspect was exciting. It was also daunting because part of the issue is we have so much of it. But our plan from the get-go was to launch it about a month prior to our annual meeting, to allow anybody that had already subscribed to get on the platform and try it out and hopefully generate a little buzz around it. So my goal at the get-go was to create a curated list of collections that kind of showcased the different avenues and segments of our videos to a wide, to our multidisciplinary audience. I created an archival, our annual meeting collection with some of the highlights of the best attended sessions over the last couple of years. Then I pivoted and created one specifically for interdisciplinary care, and really leaning into some of our existing tracks within the annual meeting, but then applying them more broadly across what this platform would be able to accommodate. And then from there, once I really had all of the videos, organized well enough, it was okay, now that I have this initial group, let's come up with the tags that's going to make sure that these videos generate, that there's good search results show up. And so retooling that and making sure that I don't have a tag that only has one video show up or no videos. And so making sure that it was broad, but like I said earlier, also specific enough so that a spine surgeon that's interested in endoscopy, if they indicate that they're interested in endoscopy, then they're going to be shown endoscopy videos. That was definitely something as well that I had to spend a lot of time working through. But I think where we landed is great. And again, through Evermed providing really great best practices and recommendations on how to create those tags and think about them and also limit them really helped me fine tune it. Because I think when I first did it and ran through and I just was going wild with it and figuring I whittled down, I probably had 50 or 60, and then I whittled it down to about 25. And it's been working really well, and I've been able to continue to apply them as we've added new collections since we launched.
Yeah, it's extremely important, especially given the multidisciplinary nature of your users, of your end users, right? So that not just they need to find the content from a specific sub area or subspecialty or sub interest or topic, but something that's for them. So it's like you're a surgeon or, I don't know, different physical therapy, chiropractor, I don't know, all the disciplines that are involved, but you can find actually the content that you need quickly is extremely powerful, especially when there is a lot of it. And in terms of the monetization, I mean, we talked about subscription. If you can just clarify maybe, so what is the model? It's a year-round you're offering it. Do annual meeting attendees still get it when they attend? Was there a change of annual meeting price and anything that's public, like roughly how much does it cost, or if it's available as a subscription?
Sure. So when we launched it, it was launched as an upsell to the annual meeting, as well as just a standalone purchase if somebody wasn't able to attend the live meeting. So live meeting attendees were able to purchase it at a significantly discounted price, especially in year one. And we made it clear as we could that it wasn't just the annual meeting recordings, it's all of these other collections that they're already on the platform. And then we call it the standalone way to purchase as well, to get access to the annual meeting recordings. And again, we used the annual meeting as the catalyst to subscribe, kind of like when Stranger Things has a new season. Netflix, I'm sure, and they do, leans very heavily into, okay, make sure you subscribe to Netflix if you want to watch the newest season of Stranger Things. Plus you get all of this other content. So it's kind of it's a similar model. The annual meeting is our biggest conference, but we do have smaller conferences throughout the year and smaller courses. So we've been replicating that model. I think we've done it 2 or 3 more times as we've had other events, and it's worked pretty well. We're still monitoring price points right now. Members are able to do an upsell at the annual meeting for $99. Non-members are $199, and then the standalone member price is $499, and the non-member price was $849. And then in training had reduced prices even lower than that in both of those categories as well. So the price points I spent a lot of time researching what other societies do and comparing it to how much we were charging previously. And so I think I put a lot of time and thought into making sure that we priced it fairly, because something that I kept honing in on is when you're charging on-demand prices, you're charging the same price for on-demand as you are the in-person. That model doesn't necessarily make sense when you think about how people engage and what they get out of an in-person meeting versus an online video. So it's kind of like charging. The analogy I was going with internally and externally is it's kind of like charging a concert prices to watch it on HBO or pay-per-view or wherever you might watch it. So you're not going to spend $1,500 to watch Taylor Swift on HBO or wherever she posts her stuff. But some people did pay $1,500 to go to her concert. They're very different experiences and they're very different audiences. And so making that clear and kind of using that as a guide for how to land on our pricing, and understanding that hitting that right price point will resonate with our members was very important to me.
Well, now I need to attend the NASS meeting because you compare it to the Taylor Swift concert, and that's the thing. So yeah, I mean, this is a whole another topic on the pricing, but yeah, sometimes associations are looking at number of CME credits, convenience, comparison to membership price, and something that, and there is a way to do it as a kind of research way. Oftentimes associations have a feel of what that would be, and then start and move from there. It's also dynamic. Over time you learn, you improve, so see how it goes.
Okay.
All right, so it's been 6 months now, about 6 months, maybe since October, 5 months. And how are things going? I know we talked about some of the results recently, and anything you can share, it would be good. But also in terms of results, but also working and continuing to work with us, but also some qualitative feedback, because you're getting feedback from end users. Sometimes people just share it with you. Sometimes you get from board, sometimes you get from other executives. And we also have some numbers on, engagement and email and everything. So anything you could share that could paint a picture for someone who is thinking about this type of innovation.
Yeah. So I'll start with some of the more organic feedback that I've received. So I know our education council director has said many times that he's very impressed with the platform. And he's actively thinking about new ways that we can generate content to add to it to help feed into that ecosystem. I've had a lot of members, when they call over the phone, maybe they have a couple questions about it. They've raved about, this is so modern, this is so useful, this is great. It'll ask me questions like, can I watch this on my phone? And I explain, yes, it's a dynamic platform. As long as you have a web server, Chrome or Internet Explorer, you can access it. So the questions are interesting, and they're also learning opportunities, but I have not had, truthfully, any organic negative feedback once they get into it. Everybody's very impressed with it, and they find it very useful. Yeah. So there's, what's nice about NASS Anytime is there's a little pop-up when someone is in there to give a quick NPS score rating on how well they're liking the platform. And we're actually rated at a 52. And I believe that a 40 or above is considered excellent. So even from actual data, we're getting really great feedback. And then monetarily, we've had a 2 times return on investment after the first 4 months, which has been fantastic to be able to bring back to our board. And as far as average time watch per user, we're seeing about 2.5 hours per month, which is very strong and is at least double what we were seeing with our static platform. So we've been very pleased with it, and I've been fine tuning, our marketing emails, which again has been really great, working with your team to work through those and tweak them a bit as we see what's effective and what's not. Everybody's always very, very responsive and helpful. And yeah, overall, it's been a great learning experience, great feedback, and great outlook for the future.
Wow, that's great. You haven't received any negative qualitative feedback, organic? Okay, that's great. I'll pass that to my team for sure. And in general, hearing this overwhelmingly positive feedback is great. The NPS score, yeah, we continue to track that because it's important, and you're constantly asking physicians and users, how likely are you to recommend to your colleagues? That doesn't lie, that metric. And then the engagement, I just want to mention a few things about engagement and monetization to put them also into context. More than 2 hours of watch time per user per month. That's very high. It's really on the highest side that we see across the clients, because just imagine end users spending 2 hours of their life on an educational platform. Extremely powerful. We've seen also that, the expression, when you pay attention. And sometimes when association, when they provide it for free as a part of membership or an annual meeting, sometimes they increase the price of the annual meeting or membership. They get less watch time, still strong, but when you pay actually for a subscription, that's where we see the highest, because when you pay attention. But your numbers are extremely strong. And the other one, monetization, I wanted to say, because oftentimes when we meet an association, we say, look, this is not, here's a video library. This is a full engagement engine. There's a monetization engine. It unlocks multiple monetization paths, from subscription to bundles to institutional subscriptions, sponsorships year-round that comes later, usually in year 2, once you have enough users and engagement. But I ask them, what would be your goal revenue-wise? And they tell me, well, I want to be net neutral, at least in year 1. So I know that investment in doing this work and working with Evermed, after year 1, that we have actually a profit center, or anything extra goes to the association. and you're in 5 or 6 months in, you have 2x return on investment, which is extremely powerful, because then you really can think like, how can we grow from here, where we can control in a predictable, we use the term predictable for predictable revenue, but in this case, predictable investment in working with a partner vendor like ourselves. But then apart from that, you basically, there's no cap in how much you can grow afterwards. And I think this is the best setup in the sense that it really depends on content, marketing, on the packaging and pricing, and how you can grow. And we try to do that because, again, associations are not Fortune 500 companies. They're tracking their investments and cost, and being able to be at least net neutral in year one. Sometimes I tell this to my team, like, if we don't do that, we didn't do a good job, even though we don't control the monetization, but we are helping with monetization.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, as we're coming to an end of the episode, is there anything else that if someone in another association trying to drive innovation, being a digital innovator, or listening to a Digital Innovators Circle podcast, is thinking of doing something like this, is there any advice, words of wisdom, anything you would pass to them if they will be here in the room right now?
Yeah, I would say that the most important thing is thinking about the user experience. When in a time when a lot of associations are hurting for engagement, that user experience is key to continuing that engagement. If it's easy for them to engage with it, if it's intuitive, if it looks nice, they're going to have a better experience. If it's personalized, that's another one too. They're going to have a better experience because they don't have to put as much time and effort into searching and evaluating whether or not individual products are worth their while. Next, I would say the content organization, of course, matters because it helps with that personalized aspect, and then goes back into that tagging taxonomy that I think is vital to organizing that content. And of course, I think something that was intimidating for myself and for a lot of people is, okay, we're going to launch this. What do we put on it aside from the annual meeting? But it's okay to start slow and start intentional. So start with what you already have and what you already know sells well. You're able to build on that because especially once your thought leaders get onto the platform, and you're able to generate ideas because you have the platform in front of you working and ready to support those ideas. So it makes them a lot easier to execute once they have something tangible that they can work with. At the end of the day, it's just kind of like treating it like it's a platform strategy. You already have the content. You're just trying to figure out a way and using that opportunity to deliver it better.
Thank you. Yes, probably each one of those could be a topic for like 30 to 60 minutes to go deeper and from like user experience. So thank you for sharing that. First of all, and thank you for sharing this story in a way, that it happened. And I think that's what we're trying to do here with Digital Innovators Podcast, to bring like real life stories, practical, some theory, but mostly how does it work in real life and what are the results and what were the challenges and the outcomes. This is a great episode. First of all, thank you again for sharing the experience, and we'll stay for a couple more minutes after we're done with recording, and wish you continued success with the NASS Anytime.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.